So, now Miss Mia Marijan, I hope that I pronounce it correctly. Marijan, from the University of Zagreb, will present the escape over the Aegean, the Ionian and the Adriatic Sea, the Melian Obsidian on the island of Vela Palagruža.
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. So, first of all, I would like to thank to my professors from the University at Zagreb, to Professor Helena Thomas, who shared with me and with us students her love towards Aegean archaeology. And also, I would like to thank to Branko Kirigin and Stasho Forenbacher, who shared with me some new information about Vela Palagruža and finds on this island that I used today for this presentation. Must always receive attention in any archaeological discussion. They have important expect that the societies of Greek will have made a conscious effort to suit their practices to the land and climate. And the territory of Greece is dominated by the land and the sea, of course, by the mountains and the sea. So those societies were surrounded by sea, and for them that was a kind of barrier, or we can see the sea like a kind of a barrier. But today we are going to see that meanwhile land was separating, the sea was connecting, and it facilitated the movement of ideas, of ideologies, of goods, of by Theo Verlaine, Seascape Learning, which he described as a social response to situations concerning the sea, where there is both a lack of knowledge on distance and lack of knowledge on time. What does this mean? So the Seascape Learning is a gradual process. One have to learn the possibilities and dangers of crossing the sea. By crossing a new parts of the land, by exploring new islands, it can only be made with using existing knowledge. And for example, Aegean societies, they were practicing short distance coastal navigation, and then they were collecting their experience to go further on the more distances, and they were using that knowledge to go further of the Greece. So the seafaring activity first began during the Younger Dryas. But what was the reason? What could be the reason for this seafaring activity? And what could be the reason for this first learning of seascape? Well, those here on the map we can see that those sites present a first visit to the islands. So the island for Mesolithic people, they were the sea for this Mesolithic people was integrated part of their hunter-gatherer landscape. The Cyclades were well known, and marine abilities and nautical abilities were quite developed since the early Holocene. And that was all based on a mutual visibility. So practically no place existed in the Aegean where the sailors could find themselves out of sight of the land. And the same happens in the Adriatic Sea. So those ancient mariners, they had to know a place. They had to know that there was a place roughly halfway across the Adriatic where they could beach their boats or take shelter overnight. And this possibility provides the island of Palagruža, but something about Palagruža we are going to see later, because I wanted to show that these maritime routes, they are very hard to track. The only way, or maybe not the only, but the easiest way to track these maritime routes can be done by tracking material or imported objects. The first commodity that was traded in Aegean was obsidian, of course, and obsidian is great for this to explain this, because there are only few sources of obsidian, as it is, of course, glassy rock that forms under the certain volcanic circumstances. It can be it provides us that we can distinguish them. In Europe, the obsidian that was used for producing artifacts can be found in Carpathian Mountains. And then here, I don't have a, oh yeah. So here, somewhere here in Liparian, in Italian islands of Lipari, here Palmarola, here somewhere Pantelleria, I don't see her, and Monte Arci in Sardinia. And of course, in the Greek islands, the most important is Melian obsidian, or Milos. Then the obsidian in Antiparos and Yali. And after Mercurius Georgiadis, he found a new source of obsidian on the island of Kos, and that is obsidian named Kephalos. Obsidian is important here because we are going to see that in Mesolithic times and then in Neolithic times, obsidian was personal required. On the Milos at that time existed no settlements, so we can say that those people were coming to Milos to quarry obsidian by themselves. And then the usage of obsidian or quarrying of obsidian and transporting it to other parts was started to be a little bit on a longer distances. But in this time, in Mesolithic and Neolithic periods, we cannot track contacts between Aegea and other areas outside of the Aegean Sea. But it all changed in the Bronze Age. So in the 3rd millennium BC, when the sail technology was introduced, now we can find not only obsidian but other material on Ionian islands, for example, and then, as we are going to see, in the Adriatic also. Nothing. And as you can see here, some investigations showed that we have obsidian here on the island from Milos, on the island of Palagruža, but also the obsidian that was mentioned from the site of Pisa, in Pisa. What is the name of it? I have to. I'm sorry. Never mind, it's not so important. But yeah. So the obsidian that was found in Pisa was claimed to be Melian obsidian, but later it is not repeated in any recent publications. So, and it also come from not secure context. So we can't talk about Melian obsidian in Pisa, and. I wanted to say that this maritime routes and technology in boat construction developed in the early Bronze Age, and we are going to see that it developed and it came all over to Palagruža here. So Adriatic Sea is a small sea, but still it can be dangerous when you are crossing it. And Palagruža provided the opportunity for take a shelter for those mariners who wanted to cross the Adriatic. In fact, Palagruža is not an island, but it's a tiny archipelago, which consists of two bigger islands. The bigger one is Great Palagruža or Vela Palagruža, and the smaller one is called Mala Palagruža, so the small Palagruža. This island, before 6000 BC, they probably formed a slightly larger, one singular, slightly larger island, and due to marine elevation, it was drowned, and the rest of the parts of Palagruža archipelago were devastated by great marine erosion and marine force. So a lot of archaeological evidences and sites are today lost. But this one that is under number 2, that is the site, the main site of the island, called Salamandria, and later we are going to talk about Salamandria. So this is how it looks like. The island is all like in cliffs, so there is no flat area. There is just this tiny flat area here in the center and here down there, but is collapsed. It is now lost. In 19th century, Austrians built a lighthouse on the main island, and they opened a quarry for providing a building stone for the lighthouse. And this work brought to light the first archaeological finds that were seen by two prominent visitors. Two of them that were at that time on the island. But the first archaeological excavations and systematic survey started in 1992 with the Adriatic Island project by Stasha Forenbacher, Branko Kirigin, Vince Gaffney, Timothy Kaiser, and others. And this project culminated in the excavation of that main central site of Salamandria, and it was finished in 2008. So this work brought to light prehistoric remains of early Neolithic, late Copper, early Bronze Age, and as well as Hellenistic Greek, as well as classical Greek, Hellenistic, early Roman, late Roman, and early modern periods. So there are plenty of finds. The main site of Palagruža is Salamandria, as I already mentioned, and the first visit to the island was probably during the Neolithic. We were able to find impressware potsherds that consist 1% of total pottery assemblage, but still this 1% is very important because we know that those people weren't afraid of sea, and they wanted to explore new islands, to meet new people, and to explore and meet their resources and arrange an exchange with them. So this is very important. Then the 99% of the time-sensitive potsherd belong probably to the 3rd millennium BC. These are small conical cups with a flat, wide rim, and slightly larger beakers with a what is the name of it? Handle. Never mind. And they are usually coming with a pedestal, either cylindrical or conical. These pottery vessels were claimed and are claimed to be Cetina style pottery. why is Cetina style or Cetina culture important here? It is important because Cetina culture developed from the inner land of the Adriatic, of the Dalmatia, and then spread to the west on the Adriatic towards Italy, to the east towards Bosnia, and reaching to the south the Peloponnese. So we can find this pottery in the Peloponnese, and this is the first time when we can start to talking about some kind of a more developed trading system or communications between those two areas. After Marijan, the Cetina style pottery finds from Peloponnese were dated to early Hellenic III, and we have a slightly different chronological system because Croatia and Adriatic belongs to Central European system, so we are usually talking about Reinecke chronology. And this is some more potsherds from there. And a little bit of chronology, but never mind now, it's not so important. But the most important finds and the most important for these presentations are flakestone artifacts. The 4% of them are tools, and the rest of it is chipping waste. So that indicates that Palagruža was some kind of a chipping tool station. And as we can see, those tools are mostly archery equipment, and this is strange because you have seen the island, it's so small, there is no vegetation, what they could be using these projectile points and so on, but that we are going to see later. And probably these objects, these flakestones, were not imported because on the neighboring island of Mala Palagruža, or of Small Palagruža, we can find accessible chert, a source chert of chert, and the main part of these tools were made of that chert from Mala Palagruža. But we have also imported the material that was imported, and that is radiolarit and obsidian. The 1% of total lithics are of obsidian. The chemical analysis were made by Robert Tykot, and its analysis shows that 80% are tiny prismatic bladelets. But the most important thing is that 90% of the obsidian assemblage comes from Lipari, and the other 10% comes from Milos. I'm going to disappoint you now because I cannot give you more information about this. The book about Palagruža, written by Stasio Forenbacher, with a chapter on the chemical analysis of Robert Tykot, is going to be published in 2 months or in a few months, I'm not sure. So it's not up to me to share their results and their analysis, but I can assure you that those few artifacts of obsidian are coming from Milos. And also we know the subsource of the obsidian from Milos, and I can tell you that it is coming from a quarry that was widely exploited during the early Bronze Age. So for those who are interested in obsidian, they are probably going to know on which quarry I'm referring to. And now, why did Aegeans wanted to come here, wanted to come to Palagruža? What was the interest for their arrival? Palagruža is waterless, so there is no fresh water on the Palagruža. Then terrestrial resources, woods and soil are scarce, and you cannot, for example, use the woods for fire and for heating. So this is something that shows us that there could not be a settlement on the island. Then the first reason probable that that attracted other people to come to Palagruža is the accessible source of church in Vela Palagruža. But the thing is that this church is not, its quality is not particularly high. So we have the same or the better church on both sides of the Adriatic. It would be crazy for them to go here just for this. So it can be a good motive that they were coming here. And not the last thing, but the main thing is that bottom of the sea that is around Palagruža provides and makes Palagruža and makes surroundings about around the island the richest freshers in the Adriatic. So one reason could be that those people were coming here for fishing, or that the sea and this rich fishers were reason that they were coming here. But the most likely reason was because the Palagruža is because of its strategic geographic position, as it is in the center of the Adriatic. I always came across the information that Palagruža is the omphalos of the Adriatic Sea, so it can be described like this. And when I return, I have said that probably it was not a settlement, but we have a lot of archer equipment. So was it fortification? We don't have any structures that can indicate that. So we are of the lack of that material. It may be a fortification, but who knows? Maybe another excavations are going to reveal something more. Was it a lithic production site? Yes, of course it was, since we have a lot of production waste on the island. But still, probably it was something more than a lithic production site. Was it a burial place? There are no prehistoric burial remains on the island. There are some modern burials, and we know that the bones can be easily preserved in this type of earth, of dirt, of soil. So if we don't have a prehistoric burial, it probably was not a burial place. But Palagruža was lately correlated with a site in the Aegean, so with the site of Keros, because the both of them are temporary contemporaneous, yes, and both of them you can find a strange and exotic material. Then both of them are devastated. I mean, the chronological and in situ contexts are not found on the island, and that is the main reason why this island and also Keros is difficult to be interpreted. So probably Palagruža was some kind of place appropriate for ritual ceremonies. And to conclude, I'm going to read, not to forget anything. The Aegean islanders could not escape from the sea, but still it was their escape. The sea was seen by those people as an integrated part of their landscape, so they had to put enough effort to suit their practices to this kind of escape. The Aegeans have been learning the seascape by accumulating the experience and practicing short-distance coastal navigation. This created an Aegean network and resulted in building new settlements and development of civilization. They developed interactions and interconnection with Cyprus, Egypt, Levant, Anatolia, northern Greece, and even Ionian and Adriatic Sea. One should note that the remotest find of Melian obsidian outside of Greece provides some new perspectives. These finds indicate that existence of high seafaring skills and technology that allowed circulation of goods, ideas, and people all over long stretches of open water. After having completed 14 field season of extensive survey and excavation programs, the most striking characteristic of the collected record from Palagruža is its discontinuity, which suggests the changing in intensity of long-distance interaction. Still, we have to improve our investigation techniques, improve our knowledge, and find some more evidences to be able to describe how was this interaction. Was it strong or sporadic? Why did it exist? What did Aegeans come here, and what were they receiving from the Adriatic? Prehistoric Salamandria and prehistoric Palagruža may be too damaged to provide these answers. Nevertheless, its archaeological record indicates that in the 3rd millennium BC, mariners recognized the island's unique qualities and honored them in their own way, just like ancient Greeks did some 2,000 years later. Thank you.
So, thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions? Nobody? Giorgio?
When you define Aegeans in Palagruža, from which place do you think they come from? Do they come from the Cyclades? Do they come from the mainland? Because if you have this kind of culture only in Peloponnese, not in the Cyclades or in the mainland, the Aegean, then perhaps they were Grecians who were Grecians. No, I'm talking about like they were people from that area. They were coming down and they were taking the obsidian back to their place. Or do you think that there were islanders that were going up there, or there were people from there that were coming down and they were trading material?
I'm familiar with Croatian Bronze Age and this area Bronze Age in Croatia, and those communities were not developed as the Aegean communities were. They were not in a situation they could use sea and they could practice maritime and navigational skills. They could probably just across the part from Dalmatia to Palagruža, but I think that here we cannot talk about coastal routes, about inland routes, and we have to start to fill this gap of the coastal area of the Adriatic with some new finds of Aegean material, because as they were using the sea and their maritime navigational skill were developed, they were reaching to Egypt, Anatolia, Levant, Cyprus, and so on. Why would they ignore this part of Mediterranean? Why? I'm not sure that they were afraid for some reasons of this part. I think that it is more that we are in the lack of local investigations, and also we we are avoiding or the everything that is written by Croatian archaeologists is really incomprehensible regarding the language to the Aegean or to the Greek investigations, to the Greek archaeologists. So maybe the language is also one of the problems. And regarding the point of your question, well, we cannot know that. I think that they were able to reach these waters and that they really come here with their boat, and that those people were Aegeans, were people from Cycladic islands, because these communities in Croatia at that time are not developed as the communities that are in Greece.
Isfakaru?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have you can, if you come there, you can see that there are a lot of holes of grabbing that source on the little island. But lately they are also talking that on the bigger island it's also a quarry of the church. Yeah.
Sorry?
Graves around this area.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the relation between this kind of tumuli with Lefkas, let's say?
Mm-hmm.
There are parts of the Ionian Islands that have this kind of tumuli. And if you have a shared, what sort of told us, let's say, like that, a shared culture, a shared way of expressing things,
Mm-hmm.
with this part of the Ionian Islands and with Croatia, then you have kind of root up and down, and sharing ideas and sharing ways of construction. Sorry. So why not, when the Cetina objects move down to the mainland, become also this kind of object that is related with kind of sharing. So you see Obsidian in the mainland, and then you take it up as part of a secondary trading system that comes with other objects from the mainland or from the islands in this area.
Well, Cetina culture was defined by excavations of a lot of tumuli, a lot of stone tumuli in the Cetina Valley, and the problem is that we have a few settlements of Cetina culture. So the thing is that the pottery that we find in Peloponnese, it is probably the most part of the Cetina culture pottery is found down there in the Peloponnese, and there are just few finds of not a few, but not that great amount of finds in Cetina Valley, and but still this pottery was found in the graves in these stone tumuli, so we know that this was the place this was the burial place for those people, and they probably we have a few settlements. So I think 3 of them, but we have to find more because the Cetina Valley is practically drowned by a lot of dirt material, a lot of material that was accumulating as the river was changing its path and was going through that part. So we are a lack of settlements, lack of pottery that we can find in Peloponnese.
So 2 questions, but really quick. So Victoria and then Philip. And I know it's really interesting, but we can discuss further during the coffee break. So Victoria. louder, please. A little bit louder, please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. We have also to take a look at the further northern Melian coast, for example. But we have in the Middle Bones Asia an interesting situation there. We have different, quite little settlements that start to fortify and seem to start developing craft solutions. And one is surely asking why they start there, because also in Hinterland the classes are really of course, like beautiful preparation. So the interesting part where starts the link with the Aegean and the Palagruža has something to deal with it.
Yeah, a lot of Italian south part of the coast and south part of Italy is full of Cetina pottery. So yeah.
Philip?
So just a quick note. Basically, the whole story about Celtic culture is a story about the development of creation archaeology, which is deeply embedded into cultural historical archaeology. In the century, it still is. And all we know from Cetina culture is basically from one settlement which is unpublished, one cave, and the rest is graves. And that's a big problem. And none of the pottery from Greece is being chemically evaluated, so we don't know if it's locally made, or it's actually imported. So it's also from. Plus, in Cetina culture, there is a huge originality. So we have Cetina on Malta, Canadian Italy, in Greece, within Croatia, Montenegro. And it's also connected to different display literary practices. For example, in Croatian Cetina culture, you get one pot or just shirts, but then in Montenegro, you get golden daggers and bronze objects, which is quite problematic. In Croatia, for metal finds, there are maybe five daggers in context, small ones. So it's this idea of Cetina culture is basically the old idea of the 20th century, right? In Croatia, in the middle of the 20th century, because we have moved far away from this culture historical process speaks from here. But the thing is that unfortunately it's not being evaluated properly. And if it's actually work on Marijan is the only thing that moved away from this idea of Cetina culture. That's why he calls it Cetina style pottery, not Cetina culture pottery.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that somebody from Croatia went there and took the pot with him and then brought a lot of pots and traded there. And it's also not, it didn't happen in 100 years, it's a long process. And for Croatia, this part of Bronze Age, we don't have a fixed chronology because we don't have stratified settlements. So Austral culture after the Cetina culture were more or less the same thing. And we cannot actually put them in such a small chronological groups. It's basically a broader phenomenon happening in this part of and traded in this bigger time period than we actually did it. It's just a short problem.
Here we can ask a lot of questions. We can ask, for example, the question if those material was lost, that was not a trading material, or was it a good like some kind of a present, or we cannot talk about it. And also we really don't know if they went down there, collected, reach and go back to Croatia, or if Aegeans traveled up to here. So new investigations probably are going to reveal something else, and not only in Palagruža, but in all eastern Adriatic coast.
Okay, thank you very much.